Chosen one, you will regret missing this Saturday if you think the wealth shift is only about money arriving. The deeper shift is about whether you are finally ready to recognize what God is placing in front of you. This is not random. A higher hand has guided your attention here because your next season requires more than hope. It requires alignment. For too long, scarcity trained you to expect delay, question open doors, and prepare for disappointment before provision could even reach you. But God is not only changing what is around you, He is changing what is within you, so the blessing does not pass through hands still shaped by fear. This Saturday is not a threat. It is a threshold, a sacred marker, a moment where old survival patterns must stop speaking louder than divine instruction. The wealth shift unfolding may come through clarity, a decision, an opportunity, a conversation, or a quiet door you almost overlook. But before it appears outside, God is asking you to prepare the receiver inside, because the signal is already moving. The question is whether you are tuned to receive it. And before anything else is said, understand this clearly. The horror connected to Saturday is not God coming to harm you. It is not heaven trying to terrify you. It is not punishment waiting behind a date on the calendar. The horror is waking up after the moment passed and realizing the sign was there. The horror is realizing the instruction was simple, but fear made it look dangerous. The horror is seeing that God was opening a door, but your old scarcity pattern convinced you to stay in the hallway. That is why this message matters. Not because you need to panic, not because you need to force anything, not because you need to chase money with desperation. This matters because the difference between a missed season and a received season is often recognition. God can send provision through a door so quiet that pride dismisses it. God can send direction through a conversation so ordinary that fear ignores it. God can send confirmation through a small inner knowing, and if you are still waiting for thunder, you may miss the whisper. So stay with this message until the end, because before we are done, you are going to understand why this Saturday is being presented as a marker. What old scarcity pattern is trying to block your recognition, why your financial struggle may not mean what you thought it meant, and how to prepare your inner receiver so you do not reject what God is already moving toward you. You are also going to receive a simple inner alignment check you can carry with you, even if you are lying down, driving, working, or listening quietly. No pressure, no superstition, just clarity, preparation, and obedience. Now listen carefully. There are moments in life that do not look important while they are happening. You wake up, you move through the same rooms, you answer the same messages, you handle the same responsibilities. Nothing dramatic announces itself. No trumpet sounds in the sky. No golden door appears in front of your face. But something inside you knows. Something is different. The atmosphere around your decisions feels heavier. Not in a hopeless way, but in a serious way. The things you used to tolerate do not feel normal anymore. The conversations you used to entertain feel expensive now. The old habits that once distracted you now feel like thieves. And even when you cannot explain it, you can sense that God is placing weight on this season. That is what a threshold feels like. A threshold does not always shout. Sometimes a threshold simply makes the old room uncomfortable. And that is what is happening around this Saturday. This is not about worshipping a date. This is not about believing a calendar has more power than God. This is about recognizing a marked moment, a place in time where your attention is being called higher. Some of you have felt this already. You have been sensing that your relationship with money is being confronted. Not just your money, but your fear around money. Not just your bills, but the belief system that forms around bills. Not just the pressure you feel, but the identity that pressure has been trying to build inside you. For months, maybe for years, you have been trying to survive. You have stretched what should not have stretched. You have made things work when they should not have worked. You have carried responsibilities in silence. You have prayed for provision while still waking up with the same concern pressing against your mind. And because it lasted so long, a part of you began to adapt to lack. That is one of the most hidden dangers of a long financial wilderness. It does not only affect what you have, it begins to affect what you expect. You begin expecting delay. You begin expecting disappointment. You begin expecting every open door to close before you can walk through it. And then when God begins to shift the atmosphere, the old expectation fights the new evidence. A small opportunity appears, but fear says it is too small. A person mentions an idea, but doubt says it will not work. A thought rises in your spirit, but the memory of past failure tells you to stay quiet. This is where many chosen ones miss the beginning of their wealth shift. Not because God did not move, not because heaven was silent, not because provision was impossible, but because the first form of provision did not look like the final result. A seed does not look like a tree. Oil in a small jar does not look like abundance. A prison cell does not look like a palace. A quiet instruction does not look like a financial turning point. But God has always used small forms to test large faith. Look at Joseph. His elevation did not begin when he stood before Pharaoh. It began in places no one would have called successful. It began in betrayal. It continued in servanthood. It was tested in false accusation. It was refined in prison. Before Joseph was trusted with national provision, he had to learn how to carry vision without applause, wisdom without recognition, and integrity without immediate reward. So when the palace finally called, Joseph was not just blessed, he was prepared. That is the difference. Many people want provision. Few people allow God to prepare their capacity. Many people want a wealth shift. Few people allow God to shift their relationship with wealth. Many people want an open door. Few people are willing to become the kind of person who can walk through that door without dragging the old wilderness into the new room. That is why this Saturday matters. Again, not as a superstition, not as fear, not as a promise that every external situation will suddenly become perfect, but as a sacred checkpoint where God is asking you to notice what has been forming in you. Because the first mystery is this: the wealth shift is not only about what is coming to you, it is about what must stop controlling you. Scarcity has a voice. It speaks quietly, but it speaks often. It tells you to shrink your prayers. It tells you to expect less so you will not be hurt. It tells you that other people can receive, but you should be careful. It tells you that every blessing has a hidden cost. It tells you that if something good comes, something bad must be coming behind it. And after a while, scarcity does not feel like fear anymore. It begins to feel like wisdom. It begins to sound responsible. It begins to disguise itself as maturity. But hear this clearly: there is a difference between wisdom and fear wearing clean clothes. Wisdom prepares, fear postpones. Wisdom discerns, fear assumes disappointment. Wisdom moves with God. Fear waits until the door is gone, then calls hesitation safety. This is the surface layer of the Saturday warning. God is not asking you to become reckless. God is not asking you to chase every shiny opportunity. God is not asking you to confuse faith with impulse. He is asking you to recognize where fear has been pretending to protect you, while quietly keeping you unavailable for the next level. Because some doors do not stay open forever. Not because God is cruel, but because seasons move, assignments move, people move, opportunities move. And when God has spent a long time preparing your spirit, there comes a moment when preparation has to become obedience. This is where the deeper mystery begins. For a long time, you may have believed the financial wall in front of you was only external. Not enough income, not enough support, not enough chances, not enough resources. And yes, those things may be real. This message is not here to deny the weight you have carried. God saw every bill that made your heart sink. God saw every moment you had to choose between needs. God saw every time you smiled in front of people while privately wondering how you were going to make it. But there is another layer. Sometimes the wall is not only in the circumstances, sometimes the wall is also in the receiver. Imagine your life like a radio. God can send the signal of provision, direction, wisdom, and opportunity. But if the receiver has been trained by years of pressure to stay on the frequency of survival, the signal can come through covered in static. You hear a little hope, then fear interrupts. You see a little opportunity, then doubt interrupts. You feel a little clarity, then old disappointment interrupts. This does not mean you are weak. It means you have been under pressure long enough that survival became familiar. And what becomes familiar can begin to feel safer than what is free. That is why some people reject the very thing they prayed for. Not openly, not consciously, not because they do not love God. They reject it through hesitation, suspicion, overthinking, procrastination, and the quiet habit of assuming that good things are never really meant for them. Chosen one. This is where God is dealing with you gently but directly. The wealth shift coming around this season cannot be received by the version of you that is still apologizing for needing more. It cannot be stewarded by the version of you that feels guilty for outgrowing lack. It cannot be recognized by the version of you that calls every divine invitation too risky before you have even prayed over it. And this is the part many people do not want to hear. The regret is not that money did not come. The regret is that instruction came first, and they ignored it. The regret is that God nudged them to prepare, but they stayed distracted. The regret is that a small door opened, but they were offended because it did not look like the huge breakthrough they imagined. The regret is that heaven whispered, "Move differently now," but the old pattern answered louder. This is why Saturday is being framed as a warning, because if you only look for wealth in the form of a dramatic arrival, you may miss wealth in the form of divine instruction. Sometimes wealth begins as a boundary. Sometimes wealth begins as a conversation you stop avoiding. Sometimes wealth begins as a habit you finally release. Sometimes wealth begins as peace returning to your decision-making. Sometimes wealth begins as one quiet yes to something God has been placing on your heart again and again. Think about the widow with the oil. The provision was already in her house, but it had to be recognized. The instruction did not sound glamorous. Gather vessels. Pour what you have. Keep pouring. The miracle did not begin with abundance that looked impressive. It began with obedience to a simple instruction. And this is important. The oil stopped when the vessels ran out, not when God ran out, not when heaven ran out, not when the source ran out. The limitation was connected to capacity. That is a word for someone listening right now. God is not out of provision. God is not out of ideas. God is not out of ways. God is not out of doors. The question is, are there vessels ready? Are there places in your life prepared to hold what you are asking for? Are there decisions aligned with the future you keep praying about? Are there habits strong enough to support what God is trying to release? Are there boundaries in place so the wrong people do not drain what the right season brings? This is not about perfection. It is about preparation. And I hear the Father saying, "I did not bring you this close to let you miss what I prepared. But I will not let fear be the voice that trains your next season." Let that sit in your spirit. God is not asking you to become someone else overnight. He is asking you to stop letting the old wilderness make decisions for the promised land. The wilderness taught you endurance, but it was never meant to become your permanent identity. The wilderness taught you prayer, but it was never meant to teach you permanent panic. The wilderness taught you humility, but it was never meant to convince you that you are unworthy of overflow. There is a difference between being formed by a season and being trapped in it. And this is the turning point of part 1 of this message. If Saturday is a threshold, then your preparation cannot be random. You need a simple way to examine what is happening inside you before the outer moment arrives. So here is the Saturday alignment audit. Do not turn this into pressure. Do not make it complicated. You can do this quietly inside your own mind. Even if you are lying down, even if you are driving, even if you are working, Let these questions move through you like light passing through a room. First, what decision have I been delaying because fear told me I was not ready? Do not force an answer. Let the honest one rise. It may be a decision about money. It may be a decision about a relationship. It may be a decision about your work, your calling, your discipline, your environment, or the way you keep giving your energy away to things that do not respect your future. Second, what opportunity have I dismissed because it looked too small? This question matters because chosen ones often expect God to answer in a way that matches the size of their pain. But sometimes, God answers in a way that matches the size of a seed. A small beginning is not an insult. A small beginning is often a test of recognition. Third, what belief about money still sounds like survival instead of faith? Maybe the belief is, I will always struggle. Maybe the belief is, if I receive more, I will lose it. Maybe the belief is, people like me do not get ahead. Maybe the belief is, I am safer expecting less. Do not fight the belief with shame. Bring it into the light. A lie loses power when it is no longer hidden in the dark. Now picture this inside your mind. Imagine an old locked room within you. On the door of that room is one word: scarcity. Behind that door are all the old voices that taught you to fear provision, question blessing, and expect disappointment. Now imagine God placing a new key in your hand. The key is not panic. The key is not striving. The key is recognition. And in your spirit, say this quietly: I am ready to recognize the door God is opening. That is all. No performance, no pressure, just agreement. Because before Saturday unfolds outwardly, something must shift inwardly. Before the next instruction arrives, your spirit must become quieter than your fear. Before the next door opens, your recognition must become stronger than your disappointment. And this is where we must go deeper in the next part of the message. Because there is a hidden layer behind why some sincere prayers still feel blocked, why some people can believe in abundance and still live tuned to scarcity, and why your mind may keep returning to stress even when your spirit wants to trust God. This is not just emotional. This is not just spiritual language. There is a biological layer to the receiver. There is a reason your inner state affects what you notice, what you choose, what you reject, and what you are able to receive with peace. And once you understand that layer, the phrase wealth shift will never sound the same again. Because the signal may already be moving. The door may already be closer than you think. The instruction may already be in front of you. But the receiver must be tuned before the signal arrives. And that is why this matters more than most people realize. Because if the receiver is not tuned, the signal can be near and still feel distant. The door can be opening and still feel hidden. The instruction can be simple and still feel confusing. Not because God is unclear, but because pressure has trained the inner world to hear everything through fear. This is where many sincere people get discouraged. They pray, but still feel tense. They believe, but still expect loss. They declare abundance, but still make decisions from survival. They say they trust God, but the moment a new opportunity appears, their mind begins searching for every reason it might fail. And if that has been you, do not shame yourself. Shame will not tune the receiver. Condemnation will not create clarity. God is not exposing this to embarrass you. He is revealing it because your next season cannot be carried by the same inner state that helped you survive the last one. There is a difference between being alert and being anxious. There is a difference between being responsible and being trapped in constant pressure. There is a difference between wise caution and fear that has learned how to sound mature. For a long time, your mind may have lived in a state of emergency, always scanning, always calculating, always preparing for something to go wrong. And when a person stays in that state long enough, even peace can feel unfamiliar. Even provision can feel suspicious. Even a divine opening can feel like a risk instead of an answer. This is one reason prayer can feel blocked even when God is still moving. Not because heaven is closed, Not because God is far away, not because you are rejected, but because the inner atmosphere has been trained to expect resistance more than reception. Think of it this way. When your mind is locked in stress, it often becomes narrow. It sees threats faster than possibilities. It notices what could go wrong before it notices what God may be opening. It reacts before it discerns. It rehearses lack before it recognizes instruction. But when the inner state becomes calm, clear, and receptive, something changes. You begin noticing what you were too pressured to see. You begin hearing wisdom beneath the noise. You begin making decisions without the old panic controlling every step. You do not become careless, you become clear. This is the bridge between faith and understanding. God can lead your spirit, but your daily decisions still pass through the condition of your mind. God can place a door before you, but if fear has trained your perception, you may interpret the door as danger. God can send a small seed, but if scarcity is still speaking, you may reject the seed because it does not look like the harvest. That is why the wealth shift is deeper than money. It is a shift from panic to perception. It is a shift from survival to stewardship. It is a shift from begging for signs to recognizing instruction. It is a shift from being controlled by lack to being guided by wisdom. And this is where the hidden layer becomes important. Many chosen ones understand prayer. They understand faith. They understand surrender. They understand waiting. But they were never taught how much their inner state affects what they notice, what they believe is possible, what they reject, and what they are able to receive without fear. When your mind is constantly pushed into stress, it becomes like a receiver stuck on static. There may be a clear signal in the room, but all you hear is noise. There may be direction available, but all you feel is pressure. There may be a next step right in front of you, but survival mode keeps asking, what if this goes wrong? That question has stolen too much from you. What if this goes wrong? What if I fail again? What if I lose it? What if I get my hopes up and feel foolish? What if this is not for me? But the new question God is placing before you is different. What if this is the instruction I have been praying for? What if this small door is the beginning of a larger path? What if peace is not a trap? What if provision can arrive without chaos? What if I am allowed to receive without apologizing? That is where your receiver begins to tune. And I want to speak this carefully, because this is not about replacing prayer with a technique. This is not about turning faith into a formula. This is not about pretending a sound, a tool, or a practice can do what only God can do. God is the source. God is the provider. God is the one who opens what no person can shut. But there are tools that can support the way you prepare your inner atmosphere. Just like a quiet room can help you pray. Just like a song can help your heart soften. Just like wise counsel can help your thoughts become clearer. Just like rest can help you stop reacting from exhaustion. There are moments when God allows a practical tool to support a spiritual transition. This is why I want to mention something for those who feel led, not forced. There is a sound-based tool called the Wealth Signal. It is a short digital audio track designed to be listened to for 5 minutes a day with headphones. Its purpose is simple. It is built around the idea of helping the brain move out of a stressed, survival-heavy beta state and into a calmer alpha state where clarity, receptivity, and flow become easier to access. Do not hear that as magic. Do not hear that as a shortcut. Do not hear that as a promise that you can avoid wisdom, stewardship, obedience, or action. Hear it as a support tool for the receiver, because if your mind has been living in pressure for years, you may need more than motivation. You may need a daily way to remind your system that scarcity is not your home. You may need a simple practice that helps your inner world stop bracing long enough to recognize what God is placing in front of you. The wealth signal was connected to research around the brain, frequency, and the shift from stress into a calmer receiving state. It is associated with Dr. Stephen Newton, a neuroscience researcher from Stanford, and again, the point is not to make this sound mystical, in a cheap way. The point is to understand that faith and biology are not enemies. The same God who speaks to the spirit also designed the mind, the body, and the nervous system. For those who feel drawn to explore it, the information is available below this message. Investigate it with discernment. Do not move from pressure. Do not move because someone scared you. Move only if your spirit feels invited to support the inner shift we are talking about. At the time this message is being shared, the track is presented with 4 additional resources and a full refund promise, so the risk is softened for those who genuinely feel led. But remember this, the tool does not replace the transformation. The sound does not replace obedience. The practice does not replace stewardship. The support does not replace God. It simply points back to the same truth we have been uncovering from the beginning. If the signal is moving, the receiver must be tuned. And now we return to the true revelation of this whole message. God is not just sending provision, God is making you a steward. That sentence may not sound as exciting as sudden money, but it is far more powerful. Because if God only sends resources without forming the person who carries them, the blessing can become heavy. If God opens a door without building wisdom, the door can overwhelm the one who walks through it. If God increases visibility without forming identity, the person may begin performing for approval instead of walking in assignment. God loves you too much to give you a blessing that destroys the version of you He has been building. So, He prepares. He slows things down when your roots need depth. He closes wrong doors when your discernment needs sharpening. He lets certain relationships fall away when their access would drain the next season. He allows hidden years because hidden years build what public moments reveal. This is why Joseph matters so deeply in this message. Joseph did not merely receive a palace. Joseph became a person who could manage famine without becoming proud, bitter, or careless. He had wisdom before he had position. He had interpretation before he had influence. He had endurance before he had authority. The pit did not cancel him. The prison did not disqualify him. The delay did not mean God forgot him. Every hidden place was shaping the steward. And that is what has been happening with you. You thought God was only teaching you how to survive lack, but He was teaching you how to recognize value. You thought God was only making you wait, but He was teaching you not to worship speed. You thought God was only stripping things away, but He was teaching you what cannot come with you. You thought God was only closing doors, but He was teaching you the difference between a door and a distraction. You thought God was only keeping you hidden, but He was protecting the seed until the roots could hold the height. This is why the wealth shift cannot be separated from identity. You are not just someone hoping for relief. You are a builder. God is teaching you to create something that outlasts the mood of the moment. You are not just someone trying to escape pressure. You are a cycle breaker. God is teaching you to end agreements with lack that may have existed long before you had language for them. You are not just someone waiting for a sign. You are a seer. God is teaching you to recognize patterns, timing, and doors before others understand why they matter. You are not just someone who has been fighting quietly. You are a spiritual warrior. God is teaching you to remain steady when pressure tries to make you collapse into panic. And I hear the Father saying, the door is not only outside you, the door is also within the way you receive. Do not ask me to open what you are still afraid to enter. Let me prepare your hands, your mind, your heart, and your yes. That is the responsibility of this season. Not fear, responsibility, not pressure, preparation, not striving, alignment. Now, before this message closes, you need a simple way to discern what is truly connected to the shift and what is only noise wearing the clothing of opportunity. Because once a person begins expecting provision, they must also grow in discernment. Not every open thing is God. Not every exciting thing is alignment. Not every urgent invitation deserves your yes. A wealth shift does not mean you abandon wisdom. It means you become more precise with it. So carry this inner check with you. When an opportunity, decision, conversation, or instruction comes before you, ask this inside your spirit. Does this bring peace with responsibility or panic with pressure? Peace with responsibility does not always feel easy. It may still require courage. It may still stretch you. It may still ask for discipline. But underneath it, there is a steadiness. There is a quiet sense that this is serious, but not chaotic. This is weighty, but not destructive. This is challenging, but not corrupting. Panic with pressure feels different. It rushes. It threatens. It says you must prove yourself right now. It makes you afraid that if you do not act from fear, everything will collapse. God can move quickly, but He does not need to manipulate you to lead you. Then ask this: does this decision align with obedience or only with desperation? Desperation will make almost anything look like an answer. It will make a draining connection look like help. It will make a risky shortcut look like wisdom. It will make an old door look acceptable simply because you are tired of waiting. Obedience feels cleaner. Even when it is difficult, it does not require you to betray your spirit. It does not require you to become dishonest. It does not require you to abandon the person God has been forming. Then ask this: does this next step require wisdom? Or is it only demanding reaction? A true next step may ask you to move, but it will not require you to become frantic. It may ask for courage, but it will not ask for confusion. It may stretch faith, but it will not feed the old addiction to chaos. This is the wealth signal discernment check, not as a formula, not as a rigid rule, as an inner filter, a way to keep your receiver clean when opportunities begin moving around you. Because the closer a shift gets, the more important discernment becomes. The enemy of your next season is not always lack. Sometimes the enemy is distraction. Sometimes it is an almost right door. Sometimes it is the return of an old pattern at the exact moment a new door is opening. Sometimes it is the pressure to rush because you are afraid the blessing will disappear if you move wisely. But what God gives does not need to be grabbed in panic. What God sends can be received with steadiness. What God opens can be entered with wisdom. What God assigns can be carried with peace. So before Saturday arrives, prepare inwardly. Stop speaking from scarcity as if lack is your prophet. Do not keep declaring that nothing ever works for you, that every door closes, that money always leaves, that you are always behind. Your words are not decoration, they train your expectation. Prepare one vessel in your mind, not 10, not 100, one. See one place in your life becoming ready to hold provision. Maybe it is your attitude toward receiving. Maybe it is your discipline with what you already have. Maybe it is your willingness to obey a small instruction. Maybe it is your courage to stop feeding a habit that keeps you financially and spiritually drained. Clean the inner environment where panic has been making decisions. Imagine every fear around provision as a voice standing outside the door of your future. Now imagine God lowering the volume of every voice that did not come from Him. Not destroying you, not rushing you, just quieting the noise until His instruction becomes clear again. Ask God for recognition, not only provision, because provision without recognition can pass by unnoticed. But recognition turns ordinary moments into holy instructions. And move with quiet obedience, not loud performance, not frantic proving, not anxious chasing, quiet obedience, the kind that does the next right thing without needing the whole map. If this message is speaking to you, place this sentence in the comments as an agreement. If it feels right in your spirit, I am tuned to receive what God prepared, not as a ritual, not as superstition, as a declaration that scarcity will no longer be the loudest voice in your life. Now let this final truth settle over the whole message. Saturday is not your enemy. Preparation is not punishment. Delay was not denial. Scarcity is not your identity. And provision is not only something God sends to you, it is something God teaches you to carry. You have been in a season where survival tried to name you. It tried to call you late. It tried to call you forgotten. It tried to call you unqualified. It tried to call you too damaged, too tired, too behind, too ordinary, too risky to bless. But God has another name for you: prepared, chosen, formed, ready. You are not late. You are being aligned. You are not disqualified. You are being refined. You are not abandoned. You are being led. You are not cursed by lack. You are being taught to break agreement with scarcity. You are not losing your future. You are being trained to recognize it when it arrives. And now, in the quiet place inside you, where fear used to speak first, let this be sealed. God, prepare my receiver. Teach me to recognize what you are sending. Remove the static of fear, the noise of scarcity, and the panic of old disappointment. Make me wise enough to move, patient enough to wait, humble enough to learn, and steady enough to carry what you place in my hands. Let every false agreement with lack lose its authority. Let every old fear around provision be brought into truth. Let every door that is not from you lose its power to distract me. Let every door that is from you become clear enough for obedience. And let this Saturday, and every marked moment after it, find me awake, aligned, and ready. Chosen one, you will not miss what God has trained you to recognize. You will not reject the seed because it does not yet look like the tree. You will not abandon the instruction because it arrives quietly. You will not let fear rename the blessing. You will not let scarcity interpret the door. You will not let survival silence your faith. The signal is moving. The receiver is tuning. The steward is rising. And what God has prepared will meet the version of you that is finally ready to carry it with wisdom, peace, and holy confidence.